Laura Walton, president of the CUPE Ontario School Board Council, is speaking to the media on the latest on the contract negotiations. We'll listen in live now.
We are laser focused on getting a deal. We have made significant moves in all areas in hopes of reaching a deal while ensuring that workers have good wages and that students and families have better services. And yet, it has been the consistent theme ever since we first asked to negotiate the very first day possible on June 3rd, more than 150 days ago, that the Conservative government is dragging their feet. What's changed now is that instead of delaying and stalling, the government is outright refusing to participate. You're left wondering if they ever wanted a deal at all. We had hoped that this government would recognize the importance of bargaining and appreciate that my 55,000 frontline education coworkers need a fair agreement. Their behavior has shown they do not. My coworkers and I still want to reach a negotiated agreement that will guarantee the types of services that students need to succeed, help school boards solve their very real problems of hiring and keeping qualified employees, and provide education workers with the long overdue wage increases that they desperately need. In response, this government has stalled. They've said no to every proposal. They've offered only cuts. And this week they introduced legislation that would impose a collective agreement and drive more of my coworkers, the lowest paid education workers in the province, further into poverty. With his actions and his words, the Minister of Education has indicated throughout this process that he doesn't understand how negotiations work. Will allow me to play my role as an educational assistant and ensure that every student understands the material. The right to strike is a fundamental right. It was upheld by the Supreme Court. It's an indispensable part of collective bargaining, and there is no effective bargaining process without it. Workers organizing each other and mobilizing through a potential strike is the only way that workers can get even close to leveling the playing field. That's true in the private sector. It's especially true in the public sector, when the employer is the government that has shown their true authoritarian colors and has a history of trampling workers' rights. The Ford government's actions have moved this beyond a question of better jobs and better services. They have attacked all workers. Stephen Lecce is saying to my co-workers, give up your rights before I strip them. We are not willing to let him do that, and we will defend and exercise our rights. Serving strike notice was completely legal. Our central bargaining committee, made up of frontline education workers from across the province, has followed every single legal process as required from the beginning. We've done nothing out of the ordinary. And unlike the Ford government, we remain at the table ready to bargain. The strike date is not interfering with bargaining. Two things are interfering. The first is a piece of regressive legislation currently on the floor of Queen's Park that strips away the rights of workers. The second is the minister's complete refusal to negotiate. This government owes it to students, to families, to workers, and to all Ontarians to change their course. I will now open for questions. Chris.
Hi there, thanks. Can you hear me?
I can.
So let's just be clear for parents so that they have certainty. So you will be going ahead with the Friday strike protest as planned?
Unless a deal is reached.
Do you not think, though, that you owe parents a bit of certainty? I mean, it's Wednesday. If they need childcare, they need to be planning that now as opposed to, late tomorrow night.
Yeah, and respectfully, Chris, that's why there's the 5-day notice. Nothing has changed. We served 5 days of notice on Sunday. We have always said moving forward, and it would have been the same, if we did not have legislation. If you remember, Chris, and I do remember you and I well, back in 2019, people waiting by their phones, waiting, at the final hours when a deal came through at the cusp of when the strike would have happened. This is not uncommon. And so, yes, we have, provided the 5-day notice. Parents should be making arrangements, and we will be proceeding. But that doesn't mean we're not going to try and get a deal before that happens. Carolyn,
Hi, Laura, can you hear me?
I can.
You said earlier that the government is refusing to participate. Can you expand on that? What do you mean? Are they not coming to the table?
So right now we work with a mediator. And what's really causing problems is that we are thinking that we are working through the mediator and that the parties are actively bargaining. And then we hear from the minister that they're not. As we know, the minister provides direction to his staff at the Ministry of Education. It is sending a lot of mixed messages. And so, we are under the understanding that we're waiting for a response. But now we're hearing from the minister that if we don't remove our notice of strike, there will be no response. We need some clear answers from the government.
So sorry, I'm unclear. Does that mean that all negotiating teams are at the table or they're not?
So at this point, we actually aren't all at one table. It would be nice to be in that situation, but we're not. So our team is here. I understand that the CTA team, the Council of Trustees Associations, is here. And my understanding is that ministry staff is here. But then we have the minister coming out today saying that bargaining would not be continuing until our notice of strike was removed.
Sorry, aside from what the minister is saying, what is happening at the hotel? I mean, what is happening with your proposal, your counter proposal?
We are awaiting a response from the government, from the Council of Trustees Association to our response.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Colin.
Hi, Laura. I understand that Bill Kaplan, the mediator, has asked you guys to maybe keep all the negotiations confidential. So to the degree that you can you describe for us where CUPE has gone to? Are you still asking for the 11% per year increase, or have you climbed down from that position?
So we have made substantial moves across the board on all of our positions in order to try and achieve a deal.
Okay, and so for all of the parents who are watching, I understand that you can't really tell us exactly what's going to happen over the next couple of days, but you're basically saying that if the government, which has already presented its final offer, doesn't increase its final offer, then you're going on strike.
That's correct.
They've offered between 1.25 to 2.5%. What specifically are you looking for?
Well, for instance, their wage proposal is actually less than it was before because they've put in more pieces that would actually prevent workers from getting the 2.5. Upon reflection on it, and we spent a lot of time on it yesterday, the vast majority of our workers would only receive 1.5%, which is actually less than the 2% that they offered back in August. There's also a concern about the service security that we really need to see that happening. We do not have that in position right now. There is a concern moving forward in regards to the investments for staffing. We have a lot of concerns that are just simply not addressed by this legislated offer. And let's be clear, it's a legislated offer. It's either take this or re-legislate it that was put on the table. Ahmed?
Hey, Laura, there seemed to have been a suggestion from the government that, CUPE was stalling. You were outside yesterday protesting, and you didn't really submit the counter proposal until late in the evening when, you said that talks had ended for the night. What is your response to the suggestion that CUPE was stalling yesterday?
Yeah, CUPE wasn't stalling. We had to wait to receive what was a pass that showed us all of the changes that they had made. That's a normal piece that happens when you're doing negotiations. You show where you've made changes. It's called track changes. We didn't get that document into our hands yesterday. So we were going through it step by step by step to see what changes were actually made. And that's when we discovered that their wage proposal is actually less than August's.
All right. We did see, a protest outside of Queen's Park yesterday. Have there been any discussions with, the other education unions about, a unified response to the legislation? What has been considered over the past few days?
I think what we saw yesterday is just the beginning of the outpouring of solidarity amongst workers, and not just unionized workers, but workers in general, really having some very grave concerns on the process that this government is taking. We've seen, unions that are typically, friendly with Doug Ford come out and denounce what he is doing. It's clear this was a bad mistake. And, we are saying you have a chance to actually change the course of this right now. Alan.
There we go. So Can you give us a little more information of what the plan is for the protests on Friday? We've heard a bit that it's all going to be in front of MPP's offices and not schools. Is that correct?
That's correct. At this point, it's very clear where the issue is lying, and the issue is lying at the government. As a matter of fact, the school boards need what we have proposed at the table in order to do their jobs respectively. So, our goal is not to, disrupt the school day. Our goal is to be out in front of these MPP's offices.
Are you expecting the schools to be able to run regardless? Like, if by you not being on site, that's going to allow them to stay open?
Well, let's be clear, there's a lot of schools that are closing already, and that's because these schools understand the value of the work that we provide and know that without us, these schools are not going to be safe and students aren't going to be supported. It's really unfortunate that this government doesn't share the same opinion and come to the table with a deal that actually respects workers.
Okay. Can you please give me like a good idea of why you can't just withdraw the 5 days notice? I mean, if you've already broken the ice on moving on your positions, both sides have now. So that difficult part is over. Couldn't you just withdraw the 5 days, go back to the table, and if things break down again, you could have another 5-day notice? Like that strike mandate's not going anywhere as far as I understand.
So respectfully, Alan, I think the big problem is the very bad faith bargaining that is happening right now. To bring in a party and say, either take this or you're going to be legislated. If this was really about, preventing the strike and having those conversations, you don't come in and tell somebody that, we're going to legislate you. You come in and you bring an offer and you work on this. I think the question that you need to be asking the, government is, why are you still determined to remove the rights of workers rather than coming to the table and negotiate?
I mean, we do ask that to the education minister, and we only get the answers we get. But I mean, I just don't quite understand it. You're both in a staring contest, and one of you has to blink. And if the government doesn't blink, they win. In this case, if they pass that legislation, I don't know what else happens. So why not just, take a breather now that everybody's moved off of their positions that they've been on without wavering for weeks. Now that ice is broken, and just try again. And if it doesn't work, then we'll be back at this again.
And if it doesn't work, we'd be back at this again. And that's exactly the problem. We've got a government that has overreached their authority by interfering with the charter rights and human rights of workers. A strike notice, first of all, normally outside of the school board sector, there's not even the requirement of the 5 days. That is with us, actually following the legal requirements. And at this point, we do not have faith in the government that they will do the right thing. Adrienne.
Thank you.
Yes, I was just wondering what we can expect on Friday. You mentioned some protests in front of some MPP offices. Are there any in particular where you expect a larger crowd, and what time are you expecting this will happen? Is there anything planned in terms of picket lines or a protest at Queen's Park as well?
There is across the province, hundreds of locations that will be going up. This is a picket. They will be out in front on strike on Friday, across the province. And I don't have that list in front of me. I wish I do, but I do believe it is public knowledge over on the CUPE Ontario website.
Thank you.
Randy.
Hi, Laura. I got a question here. A lot of talk about the penalty that could be imposed on workers for taking strike action once the bill passes. What are you telling your workers? How are they dealing with that part of the bill?
Yeah, no, definitely. So once again, you can see how desperate this government is to just punish workers, and putting in place fines that are double what would normally be in place. But we are part of a very large union and an even larger labor movement. And so there will be direction that will be provided to members on what to do should they receive a fine and how to proceed. We will be there for them, with them, every step of the way.
One other question. School boards in our area have not made a decision yet on whether to close schools, given that your members will likely be in front of MPP's offices. teachers, I guess, have to cross your picket line if you were in front of schools. I guess what advice would you give parents? I mean, keep kids at home if they're not going to close schools, or stay home?
So my advice to parents is to come and visit us on the picket line. Bring your child. We are going to be having child-friendly picket lines there with activities for the kids. We really love working with our students. We don't want to be out of our schools on Friday. We want to be in our schools on Friday, but we also want to be able to be in our schools every single day and be able to put a roof over our head, food on our table, and ensure there's enough services for our students every single day. Not just Friday, not just Monday, not just Tuesday, but every single day moving forward. Allison.
Hi, Laura. I know we're obviously talking a lot about Friday and the plans that parents are going to have to make. And I know you've been asked this before, but what happens beyond Friday? Will parents need to make those same plans for next week?
Yes. At this point, without anything changing, we are on strike until further notice starting Friday unless a deal is reached.
All right. And I know you were just asked about the fines. You had suggested that you're part of a larger labor movement. Does that mean that you've spoken with other unions who will help from their own sort of strike funds or reserve funds to pay those fines?
There's constant negotiations and conversations happening with different groups of people, moving forward and how we are going to do this. I think it's really important to understand that workers are determined, regardless of the union that they belong to ensure that this government is not interfering with worker rights. It is one thing to, say, hey, we don't want to have a strike. It's another thing to interfere with rights. And I think that that's where, clearly we now are seeing that the federal government is getting involved in this. This is much bigger than it ever needed to be. And simply all of this could be put to rest by just coming to the table with a fair offer that respects workers, respects families, and respects students. Craig? Craig? Not sure if he's there.
Yeah, there we go. Excuse me. CUPE was, you mentioned that has come off of some of their positions earlier in bargaining. One of those was a $3.25 an hour across the board raise. Has that number come down? Has that changed since earlier in the bargaining with the government here?
So as per direction by our mediator, Bill Kaplan, I'm not at liberty to share that information. I really wish I could, but I did understand completely why Bill wanted to keep this confidential. As a matter of fact, I was quite surprised the amount that was shared by the minister with you today. But you know what? We have our integrity. We've made an agreement with Bill, and we will not be breaking that here.
And the other thing is, to follow up a little bit on Allison's question, she asked about the following week and the fines that would be associated with that. So as of right now, here in London, they've said, okay, school's not going to be open on Monday, or on Friday rather. Should our boards and should boards start to plan for not having schools open on Monday and beyond if they've already said, hey, we're not going to be around on Friday either?
Yeah, I don't direct the boards on what they need to do. I know that the boards are in constant conversation with the Council of Trustees Association, and that's what I would expect to be happening. I think, what's even more important is people should be talking to this minister and talking to the premier and asking, why are we moving to this level of disruption? And it's simply because they will not come here and talk and offer these workers, the lowest paid workers in the province of Ontario, who were on site throughout the pandemic, a fair wage, and they also are not looking at the services that are required to keep students successful and safe in our schools. I mean, simply put, we're talking about putting an ECE in every kindergarten classroom across the province. For some reason, that's something that this government doesn't want to do. The question needs to be put to them, not to us. Siobhan?
Hi, Laura. You talked about being surprised by Minister Lecce's position, saying that he wasn't going to entertain your offer. What do you understand from what Mr. Kaplan's telling you about what is happening on the government side, about whether you actually can expect a response apart from what Mr. Lecce is saying?
Our understanding this morning was that a response was going to be coming today. So it was quite surprising to hear the minister say this morning, because that's not the information that we had. We quickly touched base with the mediator, and I know that he's been talking further with the government and the Council of Trustees Association.
And you haven't had any further update then based on that request? Okay.
Alrighty. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you need anything further, please do not hesitate to contact Ken Marsnick. Thank you so much. Take care.
And you've been listening to Laura Walton, president of the CUPE Ontario School Board Council, speaking to reporters there. She said she's laser focused on getting a deal still with the provincial government. She says the right to strike is a fundamental right and it's a crucial part of bargaining. She also confirmed that if the government does not increase its offer, then CUPE members, those 55,000 workers, will be going on strike as of Friday. And she also talked about the plan for Friday protests, saying it will be out front of MPP's offices, not out front of schools, because she says that is where the issue lies.